¿Lo están grabando?
I tried that. I tried. They scratched at the door. Gotta do something so they don't bark. An hour? I know why. Hey, you just turned the phone.
Quick. Hey, no. Oh,
You're on video.
Good afternoon, everybody. We will go ahead and get started here in just a second. Definitely appreciate you all being here this afternoon. This is an important topic that we want to be covering, so I'm glad you're all here. We'll go ahead and just dive right into the topic. As we explained in the email where we circulated and let you all know that we were going to be hosting the stakeholder meeting today. Basically, the topic we're going to be covering today has to do with a new data aggregation tool that we're going to be using for the towing industry. We're kind of informally calling it just the towing data collection tool. And we wanted to make sure before we roll it out that we had an opportunity here to converse with the towing industry and show you what it's going to look like, explain to you how it works, kind of make sure that everybody understands what kind of data we're collecting, how the tool is intended to capture that information, and kind of the format of it, and just so everybody has a bit of an easier time navigating it once we make that something that's available on our website for you to use. Just timing wise, I think what we're planning to do is roll it out just after the first of the year. It'll probably be within the first couple days after the turn of the year. So probably January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, somewhere in that range is when we're going to make it available on our website. And I'll show you the tool in just a second, but I just want to kind of further explain where this all comes from. So it sources back to the House bill that they passed early last year. It was House Bill 241051. Some of you may remember that that was kind of a subsequent bill that stacked on top of the big tow bill back in 2022, which was HB 221314. So they ran that subsequent bill in 2024 that kind of made some tweaks and modifications to that original 2022 bill. And part of what they put in there, specifically in the 4010.1403 statute, and just so everybody knows what statute that is, that's actually the statute that governs the towing task force and its construction, what membership comprises that task force, and reporting requirements, and some other things as well. And the specific statutes that they added as part of that 2024 bill, again within the 403 statute, is Section 4, subsections E and F specifically. So when we're talking about the requirements for this, it all sources back to 40-10.1-403, and then in parentheses, the number 4, and then in parentheses, lowercase e as in Edward, lowercase f as in Frank. So those two different subsections. And basically what it does is it's the legislature giving the PUC authority to make the submission of this operational data from the towing industry a contingent requirement for permitting, actually. So I know one of the questions I've been asked since this has been kind of floating around since the beginning of last year is, if the data is not submitted with whatever format the PUC has constructed, can the PUC withhold permitting until that is done? And the answer is yes, we can. So that's the statute that governs that. Again, 4010.1, 403, 4E and F. But we also constructed a rule that governs this process as well, which was part of our last towing rulemaking. Those rules went into effect, I believe it was back in April earlier this year. And the specific relevant rule, in case you want to look it up, is Rule 6503C as in Charlie. So again, feel free to look at that statute, feel free to look at that rule to get a better feel for how this is going to work. But again, it all tracks back to, okay, we have the statute in place, we have the rule in place. How is it actually going to work? And that's what I'm going to get into today. So what I'm going to share here on my screen here in just a second is the tool that we've constructed in order to do this. And again, it's something that eventually here in the next few weeks or so is going to be available through the website. Once it's up, it should be live. You should be able to interact with it. And I'm going to give you some demonstrations on how to do that. And there's only a handful of questions you're going to need to answer. And some of them are answered in different formats, which I'll explain as we go through it. But just want to, yeah, again, just kind of walk you through how this works so that once it's up and live, you're not just walking in blind. There's some instructions as part of the tool too, but I figured kind of more of a hands-on demonstration would set people up a little bit better. So we are recording this meeting, just so everybody knows, or at least I believe we are. So I imagine that will be posted along with this tool so that people who aren't present today can reference back to this and understand a little bit more about how to engage with the tool. All right, we'll be sharing this in just a second. Okay, so you should all be seeing it now. The format we've just elected to go with that gave us a little bit of flexibility with this is it's a Google form. So basically, there'll be some type of link on our website once this gets posted. And when you click on that link, it should take you here, and this is what you should see. So again, there's some basic descriptions here. So again, it's a towing data submission form, and there's some basic instructions here. It says, please use this form to submit accurate operational information for the previous calendar year. And that's a big point to stress here is because we're putting this in play here in early 2026. But the data to be entered this first time around, because this is going to be an annual requirement, the data to be entered this first time around is going to capture the previous calendar year. So since we're doing it in early 2026, the data to be captured is going to be for calendar year 2025. So the year we're still in right now, that's about to end. Um, and there's even an example here that we kind of tried to make sure that was clear. So if you're submitting this data for calendar year 2020 or in calendar year 2026, the information submitted will be for calendar year 2025. Now, the deadline that we've indicated in the 6503C rule indicates that this information should be submitted by February 1st of each respective calendar year. So again, since it's an annual requirement, you'll want to target getting that info in at some point during the month of January so that you can meet that February 1st deadline. And again, that's to kind of keep things on track, and hopefully, you can just set a calendar reminder or something like that this is something that needs to be done. And then that way, when your next permit application comes up, you shouldn't run into any issues. So just working through the tool here, and we'll just kind of go through it as if, one of you are filling it out. There's a little drop down here. For each respective question, you'll notice some of them are going to have this little red asterisk at the very end of it. That means it's a required data point. It means you're not going to be able to submit the form if that particular field or that particular data point is not filled out. So in this case, I'll point that out as we go through here on which ones are required and which ones are not, and the reason for that. So this first one is just indicating the calendar you're submitting the data for. And again, we put that in just as a reminder so that when people jump into this, just in case they didn't fully understand from up here, there's only one option, and we're going to change this from year to year as the year rolls over. But for now, again, assuming this is going to be submitted sometime in this coming January, it's going to be for the previous calendar year of 2025. So again, there's 2025 right there, and it's the only option. So again, it's just to trigger in your memory. Okay, I'm submitting data for 2025. Then we go on to some identification questions. So this first one here is just your towing carrier name. So it says, please enter your towing carrier name as it appears on your permit letter issued by the PUC. So again, as all of you know, when we issue your permits, you get a permit letter from us, and that's the name we're looking for. So again, it could be something like ABC Towing LLC or, Tow Experts Inc. or in some cases, it's just a person's name. So like Ron Johnson. It's however you're registered with the PUC. And again, that's reflected on your permit letter if there's any question about what name that is that's registered. And again, it's just a way that we can verify that this submission is coming from you. And that way we can check that off as a requirement that's been met by you. So again, we'll just put this in as ABC Towing LLC. Moving on to the towing carrier permit number. So it says, please enter your towing carrier permit number as issued by the PUC. So you should all know what your respective permit number is. Again, that's on your permit letter as well. You should have it on your trucks as well, and a whole bunch of other places on your invoices, all of that. We also added the functionality of our permit search function here as well. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's something we have through our website. So if you were to click on this, it'll take you to the permit search function through our website. And again, you can look yourself up if there's any question about that. But in general, it's going to be something along the lines of T dash and then 0 and then like let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. Usually it's a 5-digit number, and 0 is usually that first number. Now there are some older towing carrier permits that operated under a different basis, so it could be T-103. There is no 0, or it's only 3 digits instead of 4 digits. So again, just look at how it's registered on your permit, and then that's the one you're going to use. So for now, we'll just use 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving on to primary operating area. And again, all these first 3 questions are all required. You can see they all have the red, or actually 4 questions. You see red asterisk, red asterisk, red asterisk, red asterisk. And actually the 5th one is as well. So primary operating area is pretty simple. Just enter the zip code of your primary business address. And again, that should be probably on your permit letter as well. So you can get a lot of this data right from your permit letter. But again, you should know what your primary business address is. And let's just say it's, downtown, 80202 in downtown Denver. And again, the reason we're asking this question is to just get a better feel for how our towing carriers are spread out. Currently, our systems aren't up in a way where that's a super available data point for how where people are and kind of the concentration of towing carriers in particular areas. I think the commission is just trying to get a better sense of where you all are, or at least where you all are based, so we can get a better feel for if there's any gaps in certain areas of the state that maybe we can look into, or we try to make sure that all the different regulated services that the PUC regulates has availability to the public in all areas of the state. And again, we do our best to try to facilitate that as best we can. So again, this is just that data point to kind of figure out where people are generically. Then moving on to contact email address. So it says, please enter the most current email address for your towing carrier. And again, it can be your company one, or if for your designated agent, whichever one you want to put in here. And again, we even specify why we're collecting this to be used for any necessary follow-up. So again, if you submit one of these data entries as required, and maybe one of your answers is a little ambiguous, or we're not quite sure, or maybe based on the information you provided, we can't actually pin down who you are and therefore not give you credit for the submission. Any of those reasons are reasons we might need to follow up with you. So again, just attaching that particular piece of contact information to that entry, because all of this data, as you submit it, is going to feed into a spreadsheet that we'll have access to. And so each entry, each data submission is going to be its own row in the spreadsheet. So we'll be able to look at a particular row, which is a particular entry, and then decipher the data from that entry. So again, it could be info@abctowing.com, for example. So yeah, go ahead and just enter that in, and that covers kind of the demographic part of this submission. Moving along, and just so everybody knows, we'll do a Q&A at the end of this. I just kind of want to walk through the demonstration first. That way, if people are watching a recording later, they can see the demonstration, and then they'll only have to watch that first part of it if that's all they want to watch. Moving on to tow trucks, and you'll see this is not a required field because it's got multiple entry points. And so we just couldn't make it a required question, but it is something that needs to be entered. So it says, please select the number of tow trucks operating under your towing carrier permit, separated by the gross vehicle weight rating, so the GVWR of the tow truck itself. This data should be based on the previous calendar year. So again, if we're submitting in 2026, it'll be for calendar year 2025. So again, you'll want to be kind of keeping track of how many trucks you're running during and throughout the calendar year, and then plug in those numbers. Now, to make it easier, we made these drop downs. So essentially, let's say a particular carrier had 5 of each. So then you would just select 5 light duties, 5 medium duties, and the date ranges are right here in each respective duty, and it should match pretty close to what we have in the rules for how the vehicles are categorized, like in Rule 6511 for rates and charges, for example. And again, we'll just select 5 in each of these. Again, it's probably not going to be anything so succinct, but let's imagine it is. And again, you just plug that in. Now, in some cases, you may not have anything, in which case you just leave it blank. So let's say all you had was 10 light duties. Okay, so then you have 10 light duties. So then all of these other ones will just be, you won't select anything. It'll just be, now there's not a 0. It's just you put no answer. And again, it'll track this one, but not these ones. But again, going back to the initial, we'll imagine it's 5 in each of these categories. And we understand you're changing vehicles in and out throughout the year. We understand. Again, just the best, most accurate info you can put out there will really help us out, so we can get a feel for how many tow trucks are operating out there. Moving on to the next question, which is tow volume. This is probably one of the more complex ones, but again, we'll all do our best to try to submit the best data we can for this. So it says, please enter the number of individual tow trucks your towing carrier, or excuse me, individual tows your towing carrier has conducted, separated by the number of non-consensual tows, consensual tows, and law enforcement ordered tows. So again, those are our 3 primary categories of tows here in Colorado: consensual, non-consensual, and law enforcement ordered. I'm sure all of you are doing 1, 2, or maybe all 3 of those different categories. And then we have an example here for kind of how we want the data submitted. It's not a drop down because it's just too big of a range for us to put it in that way. But you can type in the numbers here in these different fields down below here. But we give an example of kind of how we want that data inputted, which is right here. So again, please also include the total number of tows conducted. Oh, actually, hold on. Actually, sorry, we took that out. I'll have to change that. So we're actually not doing the total number. It's going to be just by category. So I'll need to tweak that language just to make that clear. But anyway, so let's say, for example, you're a heavy consensual towing carrier, for example, and let's say you did 10,000 tows throughout the year. So let's say you did 7,000 in consensual towing, and then 1,500 in both non-consensual and law enforcement order. Let's just imagine those are the numbers for the year. So that's how you would plug it in. So again, 1,500, 7,000, and 1,500 divvied up in that way. And again, it could be more than that, could be less than that, could be maybe zero for non-consensual towing. In which case, 7 and 1,500 would be 8,500 for the whole year. So that's kind of how we want you putting it in. We initially had a field in here to have you total it out as well to kind of keep things on track, to make sure there wasn't any discrepancies there. But I think I'm pretty sure we took that out. So again, we'll just have you plug in the numbers for each respective category. And then that way, we can total it up on the back end on the data sheet. So we won't need to worry about that second part of it. And again, just a reminder here, this data should be based on the previous calendar year. Moving on to consensual tow rates. Now, this is something the legislature wanted to be considered when it comes to tow rates. They wanted to kind of explore a little bit the comparison between non-consensual tow rates versus consensual tow rates. It's something that the towing task force has been charged to look into, and it's definitely a point of curiosity on the part of the legislature, and I think it would also be beneficial for the commission as well to understand how those rates are different and the reasoning behind that. So it's something that's currently being explored, but it was a question specifically referenced in the statute that kind of instills this entire requirement. So we went ahead and added it in. So it says if you can conduct consensual tows. So again, it's not a required question because we understand some of you may not do any consensual tows. Maybe you're doing straight non-consensual tows, or you're doing only law enforcement order tows, or even non-consensual and law enforcement only, and consensual is just not part of your business operation, and that's totally fine. In which case, you can just skip over this question and you don't need to answer any of them. But assuming you do perform consensual tow rates, again, the data you'd plug in here would be for the previous calendar year. And again, just to keep things simple, we're just going to limit it to rates for vehicles that are 10,000 GVWR or less. So that very bottom rung of the rate structure. We're just going to keep it simple and just use that. So what you'd plug in here is your base rate. So let's say, for example, your standard consensual tow hook fee is $200. You just plug in $200. And then let's say you have a mileage fee of, 150, for example, per mile. Oh, sorry, I put that. So 1.50, so $1.50 per mile. And then if you have a storage fee, your cost per day, if that's a component of your operation, we understand not all consensual towing carriers have yards, in which case that won't apply. But if it does, go ahead and plug it in. Let's say you do, $25 a day. Okay. So that's how you would enter it in. So if for a consensual tow in 2025, you were charging $200 for the hook, $1.50 per mile, and $25 for each day of storage that you house the vehicle for the client, that's how you would plug it in. Now, we also put a field down here at the bottom for like intangibles. So if you have some kind of other fee other than those three primaries, then you can plug that in here. And it's two questions. The first is describing what the fee is, and the second question is describing how much it is. So let's say, just for argument's sake, that you have something like a gate fee, for example. You could say something like that, gate fee. And then the amount is, let's say, $35. Okay, so that's how you would plug it in. Just a very brief descriptor of what the fee is and how much you're charging for it.
Okay.
And as you all know, in Colorado, and actually in a lot of other states as well, there is no rate regulation structure for consensual tows, at least not currently. So again, what you're plugging in here is whatever discretionary amount that your particular towing operation has come up with. So again, whatever you're plugging in here is fine. because there is no regulation, but just plug it in as accurately as you can so that we understand kind of what's being charged out there. And then finally, moving on to the very last question. This is the last one, and it is one we marked as a required one. It says, please enter the total amount paid for insurance premiums to operate your towing carrier. This data should be based on the previous calendar year. So again, just all things considered, when you consider, your various policies, we understand, I'm sure you all understand that based on the type of operation you have, it could be two policies that you have. There's a minimum of two policies for every towing carrier, which is your generic Form E policy, general liability, as well as the Form H, which is cargo. But in addition to that, you can have up to four policies that are required, which is that same Form E and Form H, but also garage keepers, which is our Form 14. If you have a storage facility, you would need garage keepers insurance, as well as workers' compensation, our Form WC policy as well. And that's if you have employees. So again, you could have a minimum of two policies, a maximum of four policies. So when you put all that together, you should have a generic sense of how much you've paid, again, in the previous calendar year for your insurance premium. And this particular question was a specific ask from the towing task force, who's kind of looped into this a bit, because they're trying to get a feel for the insurance rates. And it's something we'll be able, as we get a few years into this, we'll be able to kind of track the trends for insurance premiums and how they're going up. We can then tether that data to how many trucks you're running and try to get a feel. Maybe we can come up with some averages for what your typical towing carrier is paying for their insurance premiums, and that can hopefully help better guide both the towing task force in regards to the recommendations they're giving to the commissioners on the commission on rates and what should be the proper rate regulation for towing carriers for various services. But also the commission itself and determining not only rate regulation itself, but also its current stance and position on insurance coverage levels and things like that. Like it's all information that can be useful. And again, so that's the whole tool and all the questions that'll be asked and kind of how to fill that form out. So just to fill this last one out, let's say it's 30,000, just for argument's sake. So that's how you would plug that in, and then oh, it may not want a comma. Yeah, it doesn't want a comma. And then you would just hit submit, and then that's it. It'll go into that spreadsheet that we have, and then we'll be able to track it and make sure that you've done it. And then again, the next time your permit is up to expire and you're going to continue it, we'll go ahead and see that you've submitted it. And as long as you meet all other criteria, then you shouldn't run into any problems. And again, just to kind of give you a little context for this, again, the whole purpose of this is to get a better feel for the towing industry. One of the examples I give is if somebody were to ask me today, maybe it's somebody upper management in my division or somebody upper management in our department or a legislator or whoever, or maybe just an outside party, and they asked us, well, how many non-consensual tows occur in Colorado every year? And my answer to that would be, I have no idea, because it's not something that we really track, and we never really have tracked it. So that's kind of a component of this, is getting a better feel for the industry. I mean, we know how many permit holders we have because we issue the permits. It usually ranges somewhere between 700 and 750 active towing carriers at any given time. There's some turnover, so every year so many carriers go out and new carriers come in. That's pretty natural, and we've noticed those trends. But I think we're just, both the legislature as well as the commission is just interested in learning a little bit more detailed information about how the towing industry works here in Colorado, and in turn feel that it will better lead to more appropriate policy considerations in regards to how the industry is regulated. So that's kind of the purpose behind it. And again, that's kind of how it's going to be used. I imagine the data is going to be used in an aggregate format. I don't know that there's any intent to utilize it in specific targeted ways with particular carriers. It's more to get a feel of the overall industry as a whole. to again kind of aggregate it and figure out, on average, how many tow trucks, does your average towing carrier run every year? Or again, the question about, how many non-consensual tows happen every year? How many consensual tows are happening? How many law enforcement order tows are happening? Insurance premiums, consensual tow prices, that it all ties to that to get a general scope of the industry and what's going on. So that's pretty much the demonstration for this tool. I imagine we'll probably have some questions. I'm sure everybody's probably muted on your screen, but feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. It looks like we got about 50 people as part of this meeting. So feel free to unmute yourself, or you can use the little emoji thing to raise your hand, and I can call out to you, and we can, whatever questions y'all have, we can go. Oh, actually, hold on. We already got a hand open. Hold on just one second. Sorry, I'm opening a different screen here so I can see everybody. Sorry, I'm going to keep this up on the screen in case the questions about or the inquiries or the questions or the comments are about specific questions. We can scroll to it and talk about it, with it on screen. But yeah, I think we have, is it Chris Ains?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead, sir.
So I'm just curious how this is going to benefit the towing industry at all.
Yeah, well, and again, I think it goes to what I just mentioned earlier, which is, we know about as much as we know right now about the towing industry in regards to how many towing carriers are permitted right now. Obviously, we have a grasp on the rates and what we're allowing towing carriers to charge right now for various services. We can even look back at the evolution of those rates, like what they were 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 2 years ago. So we have that kind of data. But again, we also don't really have, as detailed a scope as I think both the legislature and the commission would like in regards to what the industry actually looks like. And it's not just limited to this. We've also been in contact with Department of Revenue. I'm sure a lot of you interact with Department of Revenue, especially those that do non-consensual towing, PPIs, as well as law enforcement ordered tows. And we're in contact with them on figures related to abandoned motor vehicle sales. So that's data that we're kind of working with them on to get a better scope. Because again, with the towing industry, and again, I've always described it as kind of an inherently contentious industry because nobody really likes for their vehicles to be towed, especially with, non-consensual and law enforcement ordered tows. And so there's also a lot of assumptions floating around out there in regards to what the towing carrier industry is and what it does and the important critical function that it serves within all these various communities across the state. And yet it's hard to battle back against those perceptions, especially coming from the public. And so having some more tangible data to reference when it comes to some of these topics, I think can only help in regards to trying to get a better idea of the industry, the size, the scope, areas of operation, where the coverage is, where it's not. All of these things I think can be helpful, not only just to the commission that makes a lot of policy determinations in this space, but also obviously we all know the legislature has demonstrated a very high level of interest in the towing industry over these last 5 years, running 3 different tow bills since 2021. And so they obviously have interest in this. And so the more data we can collect while keeping it as generic as possible, yeah, I think can only help. And again, that's I think why they put it in the statute back in 2024, that essentially gave the commission the authority to put a tool like this in place. So
And I don't disagree
sure.
with you. Like the non-consensual and the law enforcement ordered tows,
Hmm.
all information, data is good,
Sure.
for them to figure out what we're doing with things that you can police us on, I guess.
Hmm.
As far as the consensual private tows, knowing our rates and everything like that, I just don't get that. It feels like they're dipping their hand in there to start regulating this.
Okay. Yeah, no, I understand. And again, just everything I've seen, first from the implementation of this statute back in early 2024, are then putting it into rule subsequent to that, and then now having gone through and constructed this tool. Again, it does seem to me, I don't know that there's any specific intent of this mechanism, of this requirement beyond just learning more about the industry and getting a better feel for what it's actually like out there. in regards, again, not just in regards to volume, but yeah, one of the points you raised was, okay, how does this help the towing industry? Well, again, that last question on insurance premiums, again, we hear anecdotal data on this all the time. I get calls from various towing carriers, and not just in the towing industry, but also our passenger carriers, HHG movers, all these different categories of transportation that the PUC regulates. It's not unusual for us to get calls from them, and that's one of the biggest issues that we hear about, from time to time is the fact that people have trouble, first of all, obtaining policies in the first place, but also the cost of those policies as well. And so it's something, while we don't have a lot of direct control over it, like we can't force insurance companies to develop policies for you guys. That's something they kind of do on their own. But what we can do is look at what you all are dealing with from a cost perspective, and then use that as something to be considered when it comes to the rate regulation, what we're allowing you guys to charge for various services. And also the fact that we have our insurance coverage limits in Rule 6008 developed in a certain way. And those don't change very often, but I know it's something I think we are potentially going to be looking into with a little bit more scrutiny moving forward here in the coming months. And so again, who knows, that may end up being a helpful piece of data to say, well, on average, our towing carriers are paying X amount per year. And when you consider, the average towing carriers performing X number of tows per year, that here, let's look at this cost benefit ratio here and see how that plays into the fact that we're capping their fees at this amount. Those are the kind of conversations that can be had when you have this specific data in hand to be referenced that way. So again, that's just a for instance of how that could be helpful, how that could end up in the long run helping the industry when that data is known and it's something that is on the minds of the commissioners, of the legislature, even of the regulators, myself and my team as well, when it comes to this. So that's an example.
All right, good to go. I appreciate you explaining that.
All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate the question. All right, do
Hello, I
we?
have a question. Sorry, I can't raise
Yes,
my hand.
yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, so for this, where do we enter when we buy junk cars and take them to the yard? Where would we enter that information in the form? Because I didn't see it
So,
anywhere in the form.
sure. Again, this is specifically intended to capture our regulated, I guess, events, if you want to call it that. I sometimes I reference them as individual tow events, but
Yeah.
basically it's each time you do a tow, that's a specific action. It's a tow action, tow event. And so that's what we're intending to capture here is the things that are specifically regulated by the PUC. So we're not really searching for unregulated things here. So when it comes to junk vehicle sales, again, it's going to vary from operation to operation, but my general sense of how those types of operations work is that typically, like these we buy junk car operations, my understanding of how they work is typically that operation will go to the location where the vehicle is. The title is signed over, and then that transaction occurs. So, money in exchange for the title being signed over. And then the vehicle is then loaded and transported wherever it's going, scrapyard or auction house, whatever it is. So, in those instances, actually what's happening there is you're actually if it has occurred in that sequence, what's actually happening is once you've loaded the vehicle and you're now transporting it across public roadways, what you're actually doing is transporting your own property at that point. And that's not a regulated type of tow if you're transporting just your own property from here to there. And so that's something I don't know that we would want to be included in here. Similarly, I'm sure a lot of you know this already, but we're statutorily restricted from regulating repossessions. So any type of repossessor, they don't register with us. Now, they may register with us because they also do towing in addition to repossession, in which case, yeah, they'll have a permit with us still. But when it comes to the repossession actions, that's not regulated by us. It's actually regulated by the Attorney General's office. So in that instance, again, going back here to the form, if you go to one of these, let's say we have one of these carriers that has both a PUC towing permit number and also they are a licensed repossessor through the Attorney General's office. Let's say over the course of the year they do 5,000 tows and 2,500 repossessions. Well, let's assume the 5,000 tows are consensual. So then they would just type in 5,000 and the 2,500 repossessions are not tracked. So that would be my answer to that is don't put data in here that is not regulated by the PUC. And if you're not sure about something, just give us a call and we'll let you know, if you should include a particular data point or not, or, in these instances of dual regulation where we regulate part of your operation but not the other part, same concept. So that would be my answer to that. Okay, yeah, we have another question from I-70.
Yeah, I have a question. So I have a question about like consensual tows for like comparing like private calls when the customer calls us
Mhm.
directly and when the border clubs like AAA, Giro, and all those guys, because those guys are giving us volume and obviously their prices, like for the hookup and the mileage, is a bit
Sure.
different than we would give the private person.
Okay.
So
No,
how like do we do
yeah,
just
I
like
think I see what,
medium?
yeah, I think I see what you're getting at here is you as a towing carrier for your own, the direct calls coming to you, from the customer, for example, you may have a certain set of rates for consent, and it would be this last question here for consensual towing rates.
Yeah.
So you would have something that you have like on a sheet or something that you would charge if somebody calls you from roadside or whatever, and you say, okay, I charge this much for the hook, this much per mile, this much for storage, whatever. And so in that instance, yeah, that would seem an appropriate thing to put here. But let's imagine, you do 10,000 consensual tows in a year, and 8,500 of them are through one of these roadside assistance programs like AAA and these other ones. In that instance, I would probably say use your best judgment. If the bulk of what you're charging for the consensual tows that just happen to come through that, get routed to you that way, I would probably use what the higher volume is. That's what I would do personally.
Oh, okay.
I think either would technically be fine, because again, we're
Mhm.
just asking what you charge for consensual tow rates. But in this case, you have two different rate structures, and I would probably err on the side of disclosing the one you use more frequently as opposed to the other one, just again, because we're looking at the best numbers we can figure out here. And
Oh,
again, if that's the one you're getting through these roadside assistance programs, then okay, maybe plug that one in instead if you think
yeah.
it's a higher volume. But I understand the concern, but technically either would be fine.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
and obviously you can only plug one in, so you're gonna have to choose.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, or just do
Understandable.
that average number or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I would probably just pick whatever one you think is the one you utilize most often.
Thank
Thank you. All right. Do we have any other questions? I see. Yes, David Rose. Go ahead, sir. You are muted in case. Yeah, there you go.
There I am.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm looking at this question here, and it looks like you guys are assuming that we're getting paid on all these non-consensual and law enforcement tows. I don't see anything in there about what percentage or whatever uh, where we don't get paid. Maybe they don't have insurance or what have you. I mean, if you're looking at this data, it should show probably, what we're actually getting paid on,
Hmm. Yeah,
compared to
I see your point. See, I want to say, and we do hear about this quite a bit from the industry. I'm trying to remember. I feel like there's a term that people use when they talk about that. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Um, I'll think of it. But I see your point though. Um,
yeah, because
okay.
there's months where, we're over 50% of the calls that we do that are non-consensual law
Hmm.
enforcement calls. We don't get paid on those things. So if we report that, we've got non-consensual tows, maybe 100 calls a month,
Hmm.
but we only get paid on 50 of them. Hey, it's pretty difficult to make it. We're not even making as much as we do for our consensual tows.
Gotcha. Well, and to be fair, I do think that, that data point that, oh yes, we conducted 100 non-consensual tows in this month or in this year or whatever it is. That's still an important data point to have available. But I see your point about, maybe it might be worth it to further extend that to, okay, yeah, maybe I performed 100 non-consensual tows a month, but I almost want to use the word attrition, but I know that's not really probably the best word to use. But basically, you're only getting compensated for a percentage of them, and so I totally get your point. So, okay, we'll think about that and see if maybe that's something we might want to include. I don't know if we would include it in this first iteration of this tool, but luckily, this tool is flexible and we should be able to make modifications. So kind of as we ease into this new requirement, we can kind of look and see what's working. We can look at the format. And we, of course, appreciate feedback from all of you. So as you start using it, if you think it could be more user-friendly or we could describe questions in a different way that would make more sense to the towing industry or, whatever feedback you want to provide to us, we can make tweaks to this structure. I imagine we'll probably let it run in whatever the final iteration is of this once we post it. I imagine we'll probably let it run through the whole year. I don't know that we're going to want to make changes mid-year, probably, just to keep the data as consistent as possible. So we're not changing things midstream and then these numbers tied to this question and then these numbers tied to a slightly differently phrased question. So we may not mess around with it mid-year, but we should be able to make adjustments on a year-to-year basis. So I imagine we'll probably run with it pretty close to what it is in this version that we're describing now. But I like your point though about it may be something we want to add in the future to make it a metric that people can plug in if they want for what they're actually. Yeah, I'll have to think about that because there's some moving parts to that I'd need to fully think that out and we'd have to have some internal conversations before we could put something like that in. But I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Henry, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so I've got a question about the insurance.
Yes.
And so we are primarily auto repair,
Okay.
but we do towing as well. And so when we put in our insurance amount, would I just put in the total insurance it cost me, or what? I mean, how would I do that?
Yeah, I think in general, I think the intent here was to just have it be just a blanket number or figure. So, like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about this question, it's essentially a foregone conclusion that there's going to be more than a single policy. Now, in some cases, we know that certain towing carriers have one insurance carrier or underwriter for one of their policies, but then they have a different one for another. That's not too, it's not something we see a lot, but it definitely happens. And so it's something where I think you could just kind of splice it all together and say, okay, what were my overall insurance costs this year? And again, specifically for the premiums, not for claims or anything like that, for specifically the premiums.
Right.
What are these policies costing you guys? Because again, as I mentioned earlier about how this could potentially benefit the towing industry, if we're seeing, these, high levels of premiums, it may be something the commission wants to potentially consider in regards to what we have designated as the, insurance thresholds for these policies. Because obviously, the more coverage that's necessary, the more expensive the policy is. And so, again, it's just another piece that could potentially be helpful in that. So, did that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just looking at it, and again, this is why we're making this a reporting requirement in that first month of the new year, is because then hopefully throughout that entire month you can kind of get your data together and then just make that submission by February 1st, for the entirety of the 2025 year, which is now over because now we're in January of the new year. So that's kind of the whole point, is to kind of have it set up that way. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, we'll all ease into this together. I'm sure there'll be a little bit of growing pains. We'll do the best we can. Obviously, come to us with questions. You can email us or give us a call, and We can kind of try to help you walk through this as best we can, but feel free, and if anybody's watching this after the fact, feel free to kind of use this as a guide to kind of how to fill this out. Just again, do the best you can, use as accurate information as you can. Hopefully that won't be too troublesome, keeping track of some of this stuff. So, yeah, I would say that's probably how I expect this is going to go is, people will do the best they can and get this data in there. And, once you put it all together, over the 750 different towing carriers we have, it should give us a much better picture of kind of what the industry is like in regards to tow volume, number of trucks, operating areas, insurance premiums, consensual tow rates, all of these different data points. I can see them being helpful in a variety of contexts. So, all right. I don't see any more hands up, but again, still more than happy to cover any questions or concerns any of you have.
Hey, Nate, I apologize. I'm mobile and I can't figure out how to raise my hand.
That's
Is that
okay,
all right
Mike.
if I
Yeah.
speak?
Yes. Go ahead, Mike.
So, from a distributor standpoint, and I'll be totally honest, I'm probably ignorant to a good amount of a good portion of what we're doing here. But from a distributor standpoint, we've seen premiums double and triple. We've seen the cost of towing equipment double in the last 5 years. We've seen just the cost of business increase, but we haven't seen many rate caps increase. Is this truly what this is going to be utilized for? I know there is a requirement to meet a deadline by February 1st, and please don't take this negatively, but it sure seems like this is kind of a fly-by-night tool thus far because there's some changes that need to be made and or there's a lot of things that are unsure of right now. My concern is obviously the success of my clients, right? And capping the private side of their business is a it's a dark road to go down. I've seen it in many other states. And I guess my main question is what is the true goal of this tool and will it be utilized for the business owners and operators to increase their rates?
I would say that the intent of the tool is to shed a bit more light onto the inner workings of the towing industry. Um, and that is, I think, directed a little bit more at the policymakers. So the legislature and the commission. I think that's who is going to be utilizing this data to look and examine current regulatory frameworks and decide if there's any necessary changes, either to statute through the legislature or to the commission's own rules through the commission itself. And so, yeah, I do think there can be some benefit to this. I do think that some of the data being shared here can get, I guess, develop a better understanding of how the towing industry works. Because, like I said, there's a lot of assumptions in the towing industry. I hear them all the time, and so I admittedly, just in my role at the PUC, am a little more steeped in the industry than your average person, and so. I tend to know a little bit more details about how the towing industry works. And this is kind of intended to kind of follow that same suit, whereby we're learning more about some more tangible data on the industry and how it works, on a day-to-day basis or all throughout the year, which can then be shared and utilized from a policymaking perspective with both the legislature and the commission, as well as the towing task force. And so those people who are in more of a decision-making capacity for how the regulations work, including rate regulation, I think can only benefit from this. In again, sometimes shaking some of those at times unfounded perceptions of what the towing industry actually is. That would be my response to that. So yeah, I do think there can be some benefit to this. I think it'll probably be more beneficial as we get further into it. So again, once we get into 2026 and there's data submissions from 2025, okay, now we have 1 year's worth of data, and so we can make some we can review that and aggregate it and, average a couple of these data points out and utilize that in whatever way is appropriate. But then, once we get into year 2, year 3, now we can start to identify trends, in some of this stuff. And that's I think where it will be the most useful is when you have more than just a single year's worth of data. You have multiple years worth of data. And again, that can go. Now, to your point about, rate regulation and all of that, I would point out that we do currently have the annual inflation adjustment mechanism in play, and it's been in play for several years now. So, for example, the towing industry did receive bumps to its rates I want to say we've done it 4 times at this point. There was a 3.5% bump in 2021. There was an 8% bump in 2022, 5.2% in 2023, and then it went down a bit in 2024 to 2.27%. And of course, as we ease into 2026, there's going to be a bump for the 2025 CPI. We won't know what that is until February, and it won't be instituted until mid-March. But that's another one that's coming up. Again, I think we've done it 4 or so times now already. And so there are these incremental bumps that can kind of at least help to offset some of the spikes in costs and things like that. It may not be completely keeping up, but at the same time, this is a mechanism that the commission has been trying ever since 2021-ish, around there, in order to, I guess, not have it set up in a way where essentially a rulemaking process, which can take 9 months, a year at times. Anyone, if you've seen the last couple of rulemakings, I think the one we did as a result of the 2022 legislation took, I want to say it was like 14 or 15 months. And then the one we did after that was quicker. I forget how long that was. It didn't take a year. But it's not unusual for our rulemakings to take that long. So historically, anytime there was a rate change necessary, that process would have to be gone through and explored. So this was kind of a way to make it a more automated process, and that's how we've been handling it for the last handful of years now. But yeah, again, looking at the bigger picture on what the actual base rates are, that's something that can always be explored, and data like this, I think, can help with that.
Well, and I completely respect the fact that data creates statistics, right? And you guys actually need to see the data. But the realism is, although rates have increased 4 times over the last few years, it's minuscule percentages compared to what the equipment cost, and that's my end, right? But I also see the premiums for insurance providers, which are dwindling because we've lost underwriters, major underwriters. My major concern here, Nate, is not to stir any kind of negative influence, but only to ensure that, if you guys truly don't know that the cost of business has increased exponentially for these people, yet the ROI has only decreased and revenue streams have plummeted, then it's kind of scary that you guys aren't admitting to the fact that you're aware of this. And not, once again, I don't want to come off sounding ignorant or negative to this point, but my major concern is, the big elephant in the room is the Public Utilities Commission only approaches businesses that can benefit the revenue stream to the Public Utilities Commission. So we've got plenty of companies out there that can do $50 consensual consensual tows, because they don't have the same cost of business, Nate. So because they're not carrying the proper insurance, they're not maintaining the equipment, they're not, it's frustrating, because now we're trying to regulate the only portion of the industry where someone can actually create a revenue stream outside of rates that are probably depicted from the late 90s compared to a lot of the equipment costs and the cost of business that these people incur now. I mean, from an operational standpoint, this looks kind of leery, and that's just the realism behind it. And I can say something because the PUC doesn't regulate me per se, although I am very, and anybody can stand in and yay or nay, but I am very into the industry as much as I can be. It's just worrisome, and it's concerning. And I truly hope that even though nobody's been given a direct answer as to what this tool is going to be used for, that it is used to benefit the business owners, the operators. It's very concerning, and it's almost monopolizing the portion of the industry in which these people can retain their business with.
Okay. Yeah, no, and I hear your points. And again, I've done everything I can to be transparent about what the tool is going to be used for. And again, the best way I can describe it is to have better accessible information for the policymakers, including the legislature and the commission, to hopefully adjust potentially the towing regulations, including rate regulations, as needed based on a better understanding of what the towing industry actually is and what it's doing. That's probably the best way I can surmise it. So, but no, definitely appreciate your feedback and your comments on that. Yeah, Michelle, go ahead.
Sorry, I had to get unmuted. And to feed into that, if we're going to use this tool, I believe that the tool needs to be more accurate, because as we talked earlier, different pricing structures to keep our businesses open, to keep calls coming in. Insurance companies don't pay as much on those. So now you're asking for one rate sheet. So if I submit my cash rate sheet, say me and the company next door have the same exact cash rate sheet, but I do more cash tows and they do more motor club tows. Now you have false information, because you're going to average, we both submit that one rate sheet, they're making less, or vice versa, because we do more motor club calls. So it's not accurate information you're going off of. It's showing that we're making more money than we really are, which could affect our PUC rates. So if we're going to use a tool like this, probably should be more detailed in information, because there's not information on the towing side showing what we truly go through.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
again, I
again,
agree.
I
think,
agree. I think.
Oh, sorry, getting a little
Sorry,
bit of
getting a little
feedback
bit
there.
of feedback there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I hear where you're coming from. And again, I think we're doing the best we can to kind of try to capture this information. And again, it's very possible that this tool and how we're asking questions and what questions we're asking could evolve over time. If maybe it's not quite capturing the data we're looking for, or maybe just not in the way we're looking for it. So it sounds like we can make some adjustments to that. And I think the 6503C rule is flexible enough for us to do that as well. But yeah, this is kind of our first go at this. Again, we relied heavily on the statutory language in order to develop this. We didn't make a whole lot of liberties outside of that in regards to what data we were collecting. There's a couple things, but it's in general, we're sourcing back to the statute and what it seemed to be structured around what the intent of the data to be collected. So that's essentially most of the primary questions we're asking here are derived directly from the statute. So it seems clear the legislature is like, hey, this is the kind of stuff you might want to be checking into. And so that we're kind of following the lead as developed by the legislature, which we used to create this. And then again, we stacked a couple things on top of that, but not much. So again, the whole idea is to get a better feel for the industry, what's going on out there, tow volume, consensual tow rates. And again, I understand to your point about the multiple rate sheets, even just within the consensual tow category. Totally understand that. And in those instances, like in the other gentleman's example, I would say just use the best information that you think you can. Again, we're all just trying to do the best we can with this to collect the information and then use it as best we can to, again, better inform the policymakers and have something tangible to tie to. John, I see you there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Nate, I think why don't you just put your cash rate, what is your basic cash rate? And that way everyone's on the same playing field. And that way you don't have to worry about, if you're doing more motor clubs or you're doing more insurance calls, you're doing, more junk calls or whatever it is.
Okay.
You just put that way. It's what do you charge your cash rate? I mean, that way you get a feel of, Joe Blow calls for a tow. What are they getting quoted? Because that's what legislators complain about constantly is, well, how come it costs you
Mm,
know $300 to get my car towed from the parking lot, but if I call to get my car taken to the Jiffy Lube, it costs $50.
got
All
it.
right, so that's their gripe. So let's give them that information. If we're going to give them the information, let's go with the cash rate.
Well, yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. So you said cash rate. Is that how we would describe it, the cash rate?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just calling a tow company out of the blue, you're not a customer that gives them, 1,000 tows a year or anything, because you're not getting a discount for volume or anything like that. So you're just a basic cash paying customer, which is the towing industry kind of looks at that as what's a cash paying customer?
Hmm. Okay.
Somebody that doesn't get discounts for volumes and things like that. A cash paying customer is going to pay more than a motor club or, insurance companies that are giving towers thousands of tows a year, right?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And like I said, I'm not necessarily opposed to that because I mean, we already restricted it. I just highlighted on the form here. We already kind of limited it to just the 10,000 GVWR or less tows, again, just to kind of keep it nice and succinct. And obviously, what you're charging for a 10,000 GB, your average 10,000 GVWR vehicle isn't where you're going to be charging for a 33,000 plus GVWR vehicle. Obviously, there's going to be some some movement in the fee in that regard. But I think we wanted to
Absolutely.
keep it consistent. So yeah, I'll look into that because that might be uh, something we could potentially modify going into the final version of this. Because I agree, if especially with a towing carrier that has multiple layers of rate sheets, depending on what the situation is, either with auto clubs or whatever. Yeah, maybe just pinpointing, okay, whatever fee structure you have developed for yourself is the one everybody should be using. And if we think that'll yield better results, I don't know that
Well,
I
well,
would
Nate,
oppose that.
I don't know of a single tow company that doesn't have multiple rate structures
Yeah,
for
no, I would
different
agree.
types of
I would agree with
customers.
that.
Yeah.
So okay, well, yeah, just kind of pinpointing the one that if that's the vernacular we want to use and say,
I
yeah,
think
just cash rate.
that would simplify it a lot
Okay.
for everybody.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable compromise. I'll check back and see if that's a modification we can make to the final version. But yeah, no, that's a good point, John. Thanks for
All
pointing
right,
that out.
fair enough.
So the last two people with their hands raised, we'll start with Chris and then we'll go to I-70. That's probably the last two questions we'll take. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, so we'll probably wrap it up after that. But you go ahead, Chris.
Right, so I just want to kind of piggyback off of what John was just saying is if we do just the cash calls, I think it needs to be clear to all the companies that we only need to be reporting those numbers of tows as well. And if we're reporting all our tows, cash rate, it's not going to be good.
Um, I see your point. I see your point. I worry about changing it too much.
Well, no,
Because
I mean,
I do think, just the overall number of consensual tows being conducted, and yeah, maybe not all of them are under whatever you're disclosing as your cash rate down here is, but they're still all consensual tows, and I think we'd be more interested in receiving that total number instead of excluding a specific percentage just because it was operating on a different rate structure. Like I think we can kind of tether that concept into the data points without actually saying, "Oh, don't only report these ones, and not these ones." Me personally, I'd rather want to know the total number of consensuals, even if they're operating on different rate structures. Like that total number, I think is more important. And then
as long as they're not.
we can just factor in to the data that's being submitted the fact that yeah, not all of them being reported as consensual tows are necessarily operating under this singular rate structure. I think we can factor that in just as we see it.
I mean, yeah, if you got a plan with that, I just think it's bad data if that's the way it's going to go.
Okay. Yeah, no, I hear that concern. So thank you for that. I-70, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Mike. He brought out a great points, like some like we, keeping our equipment in perfect fit, paying all the fees and everything, insurance at the most rates and everything. And it's like he said, someone eats peppers, someone eats meat. On average, we all eat stuffed peppers, right? I mean, but on one hand, one uses one equipment and pays nothing for insurance. And another point, I was just gonna say that John brought up a good idea, John Connolly, that I mean, we just have to put, the not the motor club raise the cash rates, because I mean, if you even if you're saying that you guys not gonna use this data for control us in any way, like our consecutive toes, I mean, we should still have an accurate data. If we'll all push like the actual price that we charge the private customers for the toe, that way, everyone will be happy, and that way you guys will have a more accurate numbers.
Okay. Got it. All right. Appreciate your comment. John, real quick, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, on that, maybe just making that a question versus, when you're doing the rate, and that way it's not tied to every single call. So you'll still have your number of calls, how many you did, and instead of just put that as, if what is your cash rate for a particular call, or just put your consensual tow. What's your cash rate for the consensual tow? And that way it has no connection to the number of tows that the company did. Does that make sense? If you
Yeah,
just
yeah,
reword
so
the question.
okay. So you're talking about this question here.
Yeah.
So, how would you phrase it?
Um, if you conduct a consensual tows, let's see. Um, what would I would just put, what would your rate be for a cash paying customer on a consensual tow? And that way you have that rate that you're looking at would be like your cash rate, but it wouldn't be tied to the number of tows they submitted.
Got it.
Because there would be some bean counter somewhere would come in and say, oh, well, you reported you did 1,000 tows and you paid this cash price, but the IRS didn't get their tax money on that.
Got it. Okay.
Right?
Fair enough.
So
okay,
we want to make sure we don't get in that stupid loop.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Fair enough. Well, I appreciate y'all being here and taking time out of your afternoon for us here to kind of walk you through this new requirement. Like I said, it's new for all of us, so we'll be kind of easing into it together. But definitely appreciate everybody being here. Like I said, the plan is to have this tool available and up on the commission's website. I imagine we'll put it on the industry page for the towing carriers. So like where you would go to all the industry specific information, like the forms you can download and that kind of stuff. That's probably where we'll end up putting it, I imagine. And so, yeah, just look for that after the first of the year, and then go in there and use it, and maybe make some notes as you go through it if you have any suggestions or feedback, and then you can send those to us, and we'll take a look at those. But again, that first deadline is February 1st, so essentially you'll have all of January to do this. Obviously, encourage people not to wait till the last minute to do it, because again, it could end up holding up your permit if that happens. So, but definitely appreciate everybody being here. We'll try to get at least a copy of this recording, or maybe an updated training video, where maybe a more succinct one. Posted alongside the link to this tool, just in case people want to maybe a little more concisely figure out how to use it. But we'll see what happens. But definitely appreciate everybody being here today, and thanks for your time. I hope everybody has a good rest of your December and a happy new year. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Nate.